All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the fifth session now of the 134th meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. We're set this morning to pick up where we left off yesterday. We left off yesterday with a decision that we would hear, first of all, this morning from the applicants to talk about their responses to our conditions. And so I think we will, unless there is some preliminary we ought to attend to, turn to that immediately. Any preliminaries? Are we ready to go?
Ready.
All right, and we said that we would go in the alphabetical order that we've been doing the presentations, and so that would be the Mohegan Sun team first. Good morning, gentlemen. I forgot to say this sort of timekeeping piece here. I said 20 minutes for everybody. We don't have a big timer. I've got this timer. So that will be the official timepiece of the affair. And we'll extend it slightly if we have questions that cause you to overrun. But with that now, finally, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address some of the issues in our response to the proposed conditions. As you know, I'm Mitch Elitis. I'm the CEO of Mohegan Tribal Gaming Authority, and I'm joined here today by Doug Parton, our partner from Brigade. It's been an exciting week, I think you could say, right? If not exhausting. But at the outset, please know how much we appreciate the thoughtful and diligent review of our application by the commissioners, your staff, and the consultants. Allow me first briefly to outline our remarks today. First, the parameters of our remarks follow the understanding of what the Commission instructed us to do yesterday, and they're as follows. We're going to focus on describing or clarifying our response to the Commission's proposed conditions that we submitted Friday afternoon, and the reasoning behind our decisions to craft those responses as we did, and we will not comment in any way on elements of our application not addressed in that response. Now, as you know, we have followed the activities of the Commission closely and pay particular attention to the licensing conditions that were proposed for Penn and MGM. Therefore, we were prepared and did not object to the previous conditions that were the same as offered to Penn and MGM. We also understood the conditions you proposed that were specific to our application, and wherever possible, tried to assent to these conditions and even exceed them as part of the collaborative approach that we've tried to take here with the Commission since it came into existence. In a few moments, I'm going to speak to you about some of the issues related to our response relative to marketing. But first, Doug Parton is going to speak to you a little bit about finance. Doug?
Thank you, Mitchell. Once again, Mohegan Sun and Brigade thank the Commission for its careful deliberations on these issues and for the chance to clarify the information contained in our response to the proposed licensing conditions filed last Friday. Today, we hope to address any specific questions that the Commission and or its staff may have regarding our revised financing condition as submitted on Friday. Brigade has sought to be a good and collaborative partner both with Mohegan Sun and the Commonwealth on this exciting destination resort casino. We listened carefully to the Commission's discussion last week and the thoughts that led up to the financing condition. With our response, we were not just looking to alleviate any concerns the Commission had, but hoping to eliminate them, which is why we not only accepted the proposed conditions, but added additional conditions to strengthen the finances of our project even further. We were also attempting to demonstrate our commitment and our confidence in this project and its ultimate success, and we were doing that by agreeing to more than double our commitment in dollars to this project. Brigade's more than doubling its commitment. In our response, we noted that we would include an additional $150 million in equity for the project. This would be achieved through a combination of contributions to funded common equity of $50 million, a $50 million common equity guarantee, which I will discuss in detail further, and an additional $50 million of preferred equity on top of the $100 million as a sign of our commitment to this project. In addition, With respect to the $50 million of preferred equity, actually the now $110 million of preferred equity, we have agreed to reduce the dividend rate on that $110 million investment by 20%, from 15% to 12%, increase the term of that investment to 20 years, which is outside the licensing period of 15 years, and agreed to recuse ourselves from any decision with respect to the redeeming of that investment. We heard concerns related to the preferred equity, and we attempted to address those with those modifications. With respect to the $50 million equity guarantee that was discussed yesterday, I'd like to provide a little context around that decision to structure it that way and why we did it, and to give you the confidence that it's $50 million of common equity, cash available in the form of common equity with no dividend rate, no hidden fees, just pure common equity for the project. It was important to us to attempt to maintain the ownership splits as we've constructed them with our partner Mohegan Sun. So that was something that was there. And when you think about that, if we provide an additional $50 million of common equity up front, Mohegan Sun, its ownership gets diluted. What we tried to do here, and it's important to note that this is a common structure that's used in project finance deals, was provide an incentive. The $50 million is there, but it provides an incentive for Mohegan Sun, who is constructing and operating the project, to come in on time and on budget. So therefore, if the $50 million, because we've added 150, and we'll talk about our comfort with the financing, ultimately isn't used, their ownership percentage stays at 40%, which is incredibly important to them, and it provides an incentive. But on the downside, the $50 million is there to complete the project in common equity. It's available on day one, upon award of the licensure, to spend towards the project in the form of $50 million of common equity. It's guaranteed by one of our funds, Brigade Leveraged Capital Structures Fund. That fund has nearly $5 billion in investments backing that guarantee. So it is clearly common equity. It's guaranteed, and it is there to fund the project, and that's some context of why we structured it that way. And we think it has the best of both worlds in terms of adding incentives to get the project done on time and on budget, but at the same time adding the protections that the Commission was looking for. The last thing I'd like to address before turning the podium back over to Mitchell has to do with our financing partner, Bank of America. We wanted to thank the Commission's staff and their consultants for agreeing to a meeting with Bank of America, and to hear from them about their commitment that they provided to this project, to hear about their confidence and comfort with the financing proposal as it had been originally submitted with RFA2 and further clarifications, but then to hear from them how with these added enhancements, they are even more confident in this proposal. What we heard from Bank of America, or what Commission staff and consultants heard from Bank of America, was a little bit about their credentials. Bank of America is the #1 lender and arranger of casino financings in the United States. We heard about, the Commission staff and consultants heard about what it is that bank looks for in terms of lending to these projects, and what institutional debt investors look for when lending to these projects. Things like cash flow and the amount of cash flow that the project is expected to throw off. And they heard about other casino project finance construction deals that have gotten done in recent times, and heard about how there are projects that are not as strong as our project, whether from the cash flows that they can generate, or projects that have less debt to equity ratios than what we proposed, and how those financings had little to no trouble getting done, and the strengths of this project, and why they were very confident about this project. In addition, we talked a little bit about being able to have the financing ready to go on award award of the license, I guess, subject to the referendum. So Bank of America would go to market in between now and the referendum and would be able to place the $735 million of funds into escrow. That's something that they do on a regular basis. So upon award of the license in early November, we had talked about having, the commission had talked about having $45 million of equity available. We're now talking about $195 million of equity available and the full $735 million of financing from Bank of America available for the project. So I'm going to turn the microphone back over, to Mitchell to talk about the other conditions, unless there are any questions. But I would like to say that, Mitchell's now going to talk about marketing and the enhancements to the marketing conditions that we talked about. But we really do view this as a partnership. And what we have done in our end of the partnership is more than double our commitment to this project in terms of dollars. And we view that as a strong commitment. I think Mitchell will say the same thing. And what Mitchell's about to talk about now is their commitment to this project. We think that the marketing enhancements that are being made, the restrictions that are being rearranged and changed that he's going to go into, and that was detailed on Friday, show their commitment. And from the financial partner here, this is an investment and looking to get a return on investment for that, we cannot underestimate how big these changes are. We're excited about them. We were excited before, but this only goes to enhance the financials and the economics of what this investment means for us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mitchell to discuss that.
Thanks, Doug. So I'm going to talk about clarifying and amplifying the reasons behind our response to the proposed conditions relative to the marketing plan. I'd like to start with the protected zone. Now, the driving goal behind this response was to assure the Commission and the Commonwealth that Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts will be aggressively marketed, leaving no state, no coast, or no country uncovered. We did this in two ways. First, as was explained in the letter, we've increased the protected zone to include the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts, all of New Hampshire, all of Rhode Island, and all of Maine. Now, second, to further respond to the Commission's concerns, in addition to the protections, we've committed that any gaming promotion offered at any Mohegan Sun property, whether Mohegan Sun, Connecticut, whether Mohegan Sun, Pocono Downs, Resorts Atlantic City, or any property that we may operate in the future in any state, any of those gaming offers will be valid and redeemable at Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, and marketed as such. So when you receive your offer, it will say, whether it's a Pocono Downs offer or a Resorts offer, or a Mohegan Sun, Connecticut offer, it will say, this offer is also good at Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, and feel free to bring it. This is going to give the Commonwealth additional protections and opportunities in the states throughout the Northeast, not only including Connecticut, which we talked about, but the very fertile markets of New York and Pennsylvania, where our brand is extremely strong and we're very powerful in the marketplace. Those are great markets for Massachusetts, as you know. Now, you'll also note that we proposed a condition related to marketing of our own. This speaks to our commitment to both high-end play and national and international marketing. Now, we're pleased to hear the Commission note that we're currently operate the highest grossing gaming casino in the Western Hemisphere and have for some time. You don't get to that point by marketing only to on a narrow level, or basically in a small way. We bring in high-end play all the time. Now, in retrospect, I think we regret including a very conservative study of the market with our RFA2 application, the PKF study, which we've heard a lot about. Again, for the record, it was just that. It was a study. We relied on it for some things. We didn't on others. It's not our marketing plan. As Commissioner McHugh noted yesterday, with our application, with our clarification responses, and our response to the questions from the host community hearing, we in fact provided a marketing plan and much more detailed on our plans and projections. Among those was a projection that as much as 25% of our visitors will come from out of state, 25%. Now, you saw our high-end gaming facilities when you toured our Connecticut, and you know we have the experience and the ability to perform extremely successfully in that area. There's also no doubt that our outwardly facing model that looks out into the greater Boston area, as well as our location right next to Logan Airport, is the right mix to attract these visitors. And we are completely committed to maximizing the tourism effort as well. But we understand the Commission would have liked us to develop more concrete national and international tourist marketing, and our new condition addresses that concern. We have a thoughtful approach and have that we began developing during the application process that includes concrete strategies to attract two types of visitors: the national and international tourists and national and international gamers. The first of those visitors who come to Boston because this is in itself a very special city. It's a destination into itself. We'll develop the right plan to make sure existing tourists combine their trip to a convention or a conference or a college or historic Salem with a trip not only to Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, but also to Revere Beach and the hundreds of local businesses that we've partnered with in our Momentum program. We'll also ensure that we work collaboratively with the local organizations to guarantee that Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts will be presented as a destination that it will be and marketed as another key attraction in itself into the region. Now, the second group is high-end gamers. We will provide the right plan to get them here through our partnership with Attract Asia and our opening of player representative offices in targeted markets that we've mentioned to you, such as China, Brazil, Turkey, and several others. And please remember, I please ask you to remember, that the Mohegan Sun organization has been driving high-end play to the Northeast for almost 20 years. Now, we do understand the Commission's concern that these plans may be lagging some meat on the bone. That's fair. So therefore, we have proposed that. 1, within 30 days, Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, and an independent consultant chosen by the Commission will review Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts' plan for marketing to visitors outside of Massachusetts. 2, the consultant will suggest changes and additions to the plan and present these additions and changes to the Commission, and the Commission must approve this plan as a condition of licensure and will annually monitor our performance. Again, we express our most sincere gratitude to you, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you both. Questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Zuniga?
Yeah. You'll remember yesterday we had a little discussion relative to what that equity guarantee, the $50 million equity guarantee, how that tied with, or whether it did, with the backstop commitment that you provided on other financing pieces. Could you expound?
Back to go? Okay, great. Let's resume. Remembering that the watchword for this entire process is expect the unexpected, right? Go ahead.
Do we have the stream back on, Rob? What about the screen up here?
That's warm enough. It's actually on. Oh, they have a screen.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, why don't you restate your question, because we don't know when and exactly that went down.
Yeah, after this power break, my first question was relative to the equity guarantee. You stated that there's $50 million more of equity in the form of a guarantee. How does that relate to the backstop notion that you have provided for other funding items?
Sure. So the $50 million equity guarantee is an incremental $50 million. It is entirely new financing and a commitment that we're bringing to the project. I just want to touch on the backstop financings because I do think there was some confusion yesterday about that. The purpose of the backstop financings, while they probably added some confusion, which was not our intended consequence, it was really meant to provide comfort. So what we wanted to show was that every dollar in the project had been accounted for and was coming from a funding source. So the two components that make up the backstop were the financing for the slot machines or the FF&E in the casino, as well as a third-party hotel. It is our intention, and it was our intention then and continues today, to go out and raise funding for those sources, possibly through a lease arrangement with respect to the slot machines and with a loan with respect to the hotel. But what we wanted to do was we didn't want to be here and say and answer the question, well, what happens if you can't get the lease arrangements for the slot machines, or what happens if you can't get that money for the hotel. We wanted to provide the assurance that it was there to the extent that those funds would not be available in the market. So that was the concept behind the backstop financing. And that money is there. There are two separate commitment letters that were submitted with respect to that. I believe they were submitted sometime in April with respect to a clarification question. And this $50 million is new, and it is common equity, and it is unrelated to the backstop financing. So the grand total here we're talking about was $110 million in our original equity commitments, $135 million in the backstop, which was provided, and then an additional $150 million in new equity financing that we're talking about today, for a grand total of $395 million.
Can I ask, I know you will, or Bank of America would, go to market as soon as, to raise the $732 million that you assume. Did you assume, could you share with us that the rate of that, the rate of interest on that borrowing?
Sure. The rate was provided to the HLT and commission staff on last Thursday at the meeting. I believe.
Look, I
Yeah, no, I understand.
I can put it in this term. Higher or lower than 12%, the amount that you now have
Oh, I
for
believe
the
it.
preferred equity?
You know, I request the ability to come back, but I believe it's around 8% on the Bank of America debt.
Okay. So you're still assuming that you would borrow $732 million?
That was what we contemplated. We wanted to provide assurances that there was another $150 million. That was sort of, it was sort of unclear to us with the condition whether you were looking for us to lower the debt by the $150 million, or, you know, we kind of left that open. The commitment is there for $735. You know, as of right now, we feel like it would be prudent to have the extra money there to deal with unforeseen issues that may arise. But that was, we left it open, but that's our intention, and we'd be more than willing to discuss with the commission about you know, how they felt about that.
But it could be fair to say that if you could get money at 8%, would be better for the project than at 12%.
Correct. We would be willing to work with the commission to, you know, reduce the preferred investment now that there is more common equity in the project. We would be willing to work with you.
Okay.
What we wanted to show was we now have an additional $150 million to spend towards the project and get it financed. And we'll do what's best for, you know, what we think collaboratively, working collaboratively with the commission on what is the ultimate best financing structure, if that's something that's important to the commission.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Commissioner Stebbins?
questions.
Just one quick question. It's relative to the marketing, drawing more outside visitors, setting the PKF information aside. You're talking about 25% of your visitors coming from out of state, and do you see that 25% as being a combination of people you're marketing to, plus people that are already here visiting Boston for whatever other reason?
Yeah, I think it's a combination thereof. I think we will have the ability with the power of our database and the loyalty we have, especially in, you know, I mean, New York and Pennsylvania are very big states for Massachusetts, and there are loyal customers, and our power of our database to drive a lot of business here. But additionally, we intend to be very aggressive working with the local regions, with marketing with our Momentum partners to make sure that people who are coming into the city are coming in, and that starts by making sure that Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts market is, that's one of the great attractions to Boston that it will be. So the answer is both.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Cameron?
No questions. Thank you.
I have no questions either, except that I want to, the meeting between Bank of America that you described was a meeting between Bank of America and you and staff. It was not a meeting with the commissioners.
That is correct.
Yeah, all right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Let's proceed to now the Wynn applicant. morning.
Good morning. We have a few slides. Jackie is going to run those. Members of the commission, thank you so much for inviting us to the microphone. We've been like the eager student in the back of the room waving our hand for the last couple of days. I'm sure Mohegan Sun felt the same way. So we appreciate the opportunity to clarify some of the responses that we made last Friday to the 86 conditions that we received on Wednesday. What I'd like to start off with is to try to give you an overview of our approach toward our business, because that's exactly the way we approached the conditions. And our approach to our business is one of incredible discipline. We consider ourselves to be meticulous, and I'm sure you can identify with incredible attention to detail. By approaching our business that way, we have been able to achieve the financial wherewithal that you have all noted. We have been grateful sitting here, listening to your appreciation for the balance sheet that we have built. And we have built that balance sheet dollar by dollar over the past 12 years of operating this company when we began at Wynn Las Vegas. That started after 27 years of Mr. Wynn's work at Mirage and building that company. We use that discipline to make sure that everything we consider we do in a way that continues to build our wherewithal and our ability to perform. We know and are confident that notwithstanding the vagaries of the global economy, that we will be able to deliver for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts the statutory mandate. And that mandate includes creating jobs, driving revenue, and creating economic development. And so when we think about how we approach what we do in Massachusetts, we are guided by those principles. We have used those principles in Las Vegas in a very, very competitive market. We operate in two of the most competitive markets in the world, Las Vegas and Macau. And while there was lots of talk about who had the highest grossing casino in the Northern Hemisphere, I might point out that we consider and we look at our business at total revenues. And while we may have been about $30 million short of the gaming revenues of Mohegan Sun in the past 12 months, our overall revenues were 60% greater at $1.6 billion. We care a lot about those non-gaming revenues because they identify for us the quality of our customer, the quality of our business, and that is the business that we intend to bring to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So the conditions that we wanted to talk about and give you a little bit of understanding of our thought process are basically in two buckets. Jackie, the first one? The first one is relatively straightforward, is building and site design. We accompanied our markup of the conditions with a 4-page letter from Mr. Wynn. The commission construed the letter as, and I think other people did too, as a pushback to any comments about the design. In fact, we could have said, we accept. We wanted to actually, in the letter, give you a little bit about our thought process. The reconsideration of that tower began when the comments from the commission were first noted on Monday of last week. So Mr. Wynn and DeRuyter have spent countless hours thinking about that tower and responding and are ready to respond to your comments and your desire for a tower that looks more like Las Vegas. So we will be prepared within short order, if we are lucky enough to be designated, to provide you with our updated thinking in that area. Let's move next to the slightly more complicated Boston-Charlestown relationship. First of all, we want to let you know that collaboration is a value that is important to us. We wouldn't have been as successful as we are around the world with multiple partners being governments, nonprofits, employees, and shareholders if we weren't collaborative at our nature. I will tell you that sometimes discipline and passion is taken for unfriendliness or lack of collaboration, but that is not our intent, and it is not borne out by our conduct. I think that you will be able to make a conclusion about your applicants about how they've dealt with you over the past several years. I know that I personally have been working in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for about a decade on this matter. But we have worked diligently with the commission and the staff, as well as our surrounding communities, our local business partners, to try to be successful in the Commonwealth, and we intend for that to continue. We, of course, would have preferred a consensual surrounding community agreement with the City of Boston. As you've been party to, that's been really difficult. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that, is that we've straddled two mayoral administrations. Before we came on the scene, the previous administration had been really vocal in support of the competing project. Although its makeup was different, it was the competing project. And so we didn't have a whole lot of success in negotiating with Mayor Menino and his administration with respect to certain mitigation topics. When Mayor Walsh was elected, he came into the middle of a half-advanced process, so I think that was probably difficult for him and his administration to figure out exactly how they wanted to approach it. And we've been relatively strict in our adherence to what we're trying to achieve in a surrounding community agreement. Pursuant to the statute and pursuant to the dictation of the commission, is we have focused on mitigation in a surrounding community agreement and solely on mitigation. Post-decision, if we're lucky enough to be designated, one of the first calls will be to Mayor Walsh, and we're hoping that we can, at the end of the day, get to a place where we're all in agreement on what should happen with respect to Sullivan Square and overall mitigation vis-a-vis Boston. Sullivan Square has become the dominant topic in the overall mitigation with Boston. We look at it not only as the dry commitment that we have made on paper with respect to money, but an overall holistic approach to managing traffic. Frankly, it is not in our interest to invest $1.6 billion and be left with a transportation surrounding that does not work. So when we looked at overall transportation, one of the things was to reduce cars through that intersection. We mean to achieve that through the combination of lots of strategies, including water transportation, shuttle buses, park and rides, employee shift modifications, off-site parking for employees, and enhanced pedestrian and bike access and connectivity to the surrounding area. The MEPA process has been incredibly demanding, complete, expensive, and it has included lots of attention to Sullivan Square, as well as many other intersections throughout the region. It includes a very robust transportation demand management program applicable to both patrons and employees. We know that you're very familiar with how those plans work and probably the details of our plan. There is accountability under MEPA to the Department of Transportation and the other involved agencies on that plan. So we are held throughout that process to accountability. And we would be very willing to include the City of Boston and the Commission in the reporting and accountability under those plans. But let's advance, Jackie, to our slide. And maybe we can try to get straight the economic part of this and what we've offered, and frankly, share the pain of the journey that we have ridden thus far on the Sullivan Square mitigation. So the way we started this process was as required by the Commission, is we had lots of conversations with the City of Boston, its representatives. Those were running in parallel to the process that we were running through MEPA and with the Department of Transportation. But when it became clear that we were unable to get a surrounding community agreement signed up with Boston, we prepared to do arbitration pursuant to the rules articulated by the Commission. And so part of that process, as you well know, is the development of the now infamous BAFO, Best and Final Offer. We had some experience with BAFOs because we actually arbitrated 2 of our surrounding community agreements. We prevailed in those arbitrations, and we think it's because we were very, very thoughtful in how we constructed the BAFOs. We wanted to meet all of the mitigation requirements of the commission and the law, and we wanted to make sure that they were supportable by hard evidence. And so that was the same process we went through in formulating the BAFO for Boston. So just to review, that included a $1 million upfront payment. Total annual payments, and I'm going to aggregate these because Commissioner Cameron and we look at these slightly differently. Total annual payments of $39 million over the 15-year period, basically $2.6 million a year. In addition, there is what we call Phase 1 improvement to Sullivan Square. That's a $6 million traffic improvement that should be the very start of the ultimate long-term solution. I mean, one of the struggles here is that there is not, notwithstanding, as Commissioner McHugh pointed out for us, a decade worth of conversation, there really isn't a plan that is currently being implemented for Sullivan Square. We have seen and reviewed in depth the consensus plan that the citizens of Charlestown seem to support. We are happy to support and hopefully act as a catalyst for the long-term implementation of that plan. And we designed our mitigation to begin that plan. We didn't want to do something that was a Band-Aid that didn't support the long-term plan. So we spent a lot of time and effort trying to engineer something that supported the long-term plan. That's the $6 million. So we started out with a BAFO that looks like $46 million. That went on under a lot of scrutiny by the commission and its consultants. So last week, as Commissioner Cameron articulated her review and suggestions with respect to the BAFO, she maintained the $1 million upfront payment. The total annual payments, she took the entire $39 million, 15 of which we had designated for Sullivan Square, toward other mitigation for Boston, and added an incremental requirement that we fund 10% of the ultimate cost of Sullivan Square. It's currently, and I think it's a very back of the envelope, looks like $100 million. Commissioner Cameron, like we, wanting to make sure that she understood the upside or downside of that potential cost, said that could range from $10 to $20 million. She retained the $6 million initial fix at Sullivan Square and came up with a total payment of between $56 and $66 million over that period. In addition, introduced something called the traffic reduction payment. It was described to us as be positive, it's an incentive. We looked at it a little like a penalty because we actually never got any money back or a benefit for doing a good job and meeting our projections. But we were assessed $20,000 a car if we missed our projections on traffic. One of the things that our financial discipline brings us to is not agreeing to open-ended economic commitments that could jeopardize the stability of our enterprise. And so that was an uncapped liability. There were some examples given, but there was never a cap. So we were uncomfortable with that. We went back and in our considered response to the conditions, may have outsmarted ourselves, but what we came back with on Friday was in the far right-hand column, which we increased the upfront payment to beyond what the commission had requested with an additional $1.75 million. And we thought that could be additional planning or seed money for Sullivan Square. We reallocated and increased the annual payments to an aggregate of $54 million. So we went from 39 to 54, 22 and a half of which was dedicated toward this long-term fix at Sullivan Square. We maintained our $6 million initial improvement at Sullivan Square, and we ended up right in the middle of Commissioner Cameron's range with $62,750,000 of committed money. We did not address or accept the condition of the traffic reduction payment. We tried to achieve what we thought were the commission's goals of additional money for Sullivan Square while taking off the business risk that we were uncomfortable with. So we listened yesterday, and we went back and talked among ourselves for a really long time to try to get to the collaborative skin in the game attitude that we thought the commission was asking us for. So today we're here, and we're here to walk through another scenario, which is starting with the Gaming Commission's proposed structure. So we have the $1 million upfront payment that Commissioner Cameron had requested. Our annual payments towards non-Sullivan Square mitigation are $24 million, and then we increased the commitment to Sullivan Square to $25 million over the term. We've maintained our $6 million initial fix for a total of 56 in committed payments. But we have agreed to the traffic reduction payment construct with hopefully a twist that enables us all to feel comfortable with it. We have $20 million in this chart. We think of it as a $2 million cap every year. Based on the Commission's methodology as outlined in the conditions that were circulated last week. That was for a 10-year period, and so we've mimicked that 10-year period. We bring then the total commitment to $76 million from the 46 we started with at the BAFO. So that seems like a lot of talking and a lot of treading of ground. So we tried on this slide to summarize where we ended up in a way to respond to the Commission's desires with respect to Boston and Sullivan Square. So we've ended up significantly increasing our mitigation payments. We will agree to a look-back condition that's consistent with our other surrounding community agreements. We did not appreciate the technical situation that Boston found itself in. Without a surrounding community status, they weren't entitled to the look back that is inherent in the statute. So we would be prepared to agree to that, consistent with our other surrounding community agreements. We're happy to include the Commission and the City of Boston in our traffic demand management plan. We will copy them on the reports, include them on a consultative basis with respect to our accountability under the DOT mandated process. And the last thing that I wanted to touch upon was something that I think Commissioner McHugh mentioned yesterday, and that was this payment mechanism and the scary nature of having the Commission try to administer the funds. We actually did that in the interest of achieving what we thought was a goal, which is that mitigation money gets spent for mitigation. And so we thought that unless and until we get Boston at the table, that we would pay that money to the Commission. If the Commission would like the ex-Sullivan Square money to go directly to the City of Boston, even without an agreement, we're amenable to that. We were actually trying to make it better. We would like to maintain the Commission's suggestion with respect to the escrow on the Sullivan Square funds. So that brings me to the end of my monologue.
Well, thank you. All right.
Before we finish, I guess Governor Weld would like to.
Thank you, Ms. Sinatra. Members of the Commission, my name is William Weld. I represent the applicant Win Mass. Just a couple of minutes, if I may. I've been dealing with the management of Win Mass for the last 2 years. The company has something of a reputation as a blue chip within the industry. I think it's earned. In dealing with these folks, you take a bite, it's sirloin, you take another bite, it's still sirloin. It doesn't vary, and I think the record speaks for itself, but I think you will find, examining their performance in other jurisdictions, that they've been pretty much a model corporate citizen and very generous to the community in every jurisdiction in which they've operated. In this instance, the company is also hugely incented, both economically and as a matter of quality, to participate to the hilt in any public process, whether it's MIPA or Monsanto or Sullivan Square, because these all relate to the guest experience of their guests, and that's the sine qua non for this organization. They're focused with laser-like intensity on the guest experience. So I think you can regard them as very much incented to the kind of participation that I know is of interest to the Commission. I've been in and around government in the City of Boston for 30 years, and I've had a good working relationship with whoever was the mayor from time to time, and expect that to continue. from time to time, you do run into situations in local and state politics where there's gridlock and people have their teeth on edge. And the process in Sullivan Square, for example, has not been entirely fruitful the last 15 years. There's been federal government money available, but for whatever reason, there's been a lot of studies, not too many shovels in the ground. I think I would recommend to the commission that they keep their oar in here and that you retain jurisdiction, as it were. I do think that in politics, when a matter has everybody's attention, it tends to yield to goodwill and get resolved. But I think there's nothing like retaining jurisdiction to create the leverage to make sure that the matter continues to have everybody's attention. We can report to the commission quarterly, monthly. This is what we did when we filed suit in 1983, a long time ago, to clean up Boston Harbor. We made periodic reports to the court. There have been similar gridlock there. Neither the House nor the Senate at the state level wanted to appropriate the money to clean up Boston Harbor, which was filthy, and everybody knew it, but the leadership had other priorities for the public money that would be involved, because it was an expensive fix. But as a result of all those reports, the problem did get fixed. So I would view.
Mr. Weld, your time is up, so if you bring it to a close, I think I have some questions.
I will close with this sentence, Your Honor, that I would view the award of a license to win as a potential catalyst to result in the cleanup not only of the Monsanto site, but the focusing of everyone's attention on traffic problems such as Sullivan Square, and get those fixed as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Questions from commissioners? Mr. Cameron?
I actually think I followed the presentation and understand what Ms. Sinatra is talking about with the new conditions. So I thank you for that explanation. No questions.
I want to make a point and just make sure I'm clear on this. Is we looked at all the back and forth on the numbers, the $6 million for the immediate solutions to Sullivan Squares may be required by MIPA as stayed consistent, but there's some element that, as it was referred to me, that's a plug-in number. So whatever MIPA essentially comes back and tells you you need to do to come up with a short-term solution, that dollar amount could go up or down.
That's correct. We're required to do the mitigation as the plan is laid out, whatever the cost might be. And so until the final bids are done, we won't know the actual cost of adding traffic lights and doing any sort of widening. But our commitment is to do the plan that is agreed upon ultimately with MIPA, the DOT, the City of Boston, and whatever that cost. If it's $6 million, great. If it's less than $6 million, fine. If it's more than $6 million. But the answer is that we will do the mitigation as required.
Can I just go back to that chart, Ms. Crum, the one that has the blue? The annual payments in the second line of $24 million have been restored. I believe, Ms. Sinatra, you characterized them as non-Sullivan Square.
Yes.
But remind me, would those be available to the city if, in case the city wanted to use those for Sullivan Square mitigation?
Theoretically, they would be. There were categories in the BAFO that included allocations for water transportation, public safety, which I know is a concern to the citizens of Charlestown, to Charlestown nonprofits, and to traffic. We're not particularly wedded to a strict appropriation according to those buckets. So if the City of Boston requested that all their money be spent in that way, I suppose it would be okay with us, although we were quite committed to the citizens of Charlestown to get a special benefit, so we had set money aside for them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm having a little difficulty as these numbers have come in, translating the monthly sums to annual sums and seeing where the differences are, because there is a difference between the commission's overall proposal and the proposal that's now on the table, we came up with a total range, including Sullivan Square and taking into account a worst-case scenario or a hypothetical scenario with respect to the traffic reduction portion. We came up with a range of 55 to 105 million over that period of time. 31 million to 81 million of which was for the Sullivan Square portion, including the 6 million for the initial short-term repairs. And this now comes up with a figure, a fixed figure, no range, well, really a range, depending on how the traffic reduction payment works, of $76 million, which is up from the response, which was 62 million. I'm still not clear as to where all of the differences lie. And you've done this thoughtfully and carefully, so why don't you tell me where they lie?
I'll see if I can help you.
Help us.
Most of the difference
Right.
relates to the traffic reduction payment. So I would characterize our range as being from 56 to 76, depending on how much traffic reduction payment ends up coming in.
Right.
And so we end up on the low end of your fixed range that Commissioner Cameron had suggested. But we have bought into an additional potential $20 million if our projections are wrong, because we understood from yesterday that the commission was interested in making sure that we lived or died by our projections. So you had an open-ended, which is how you got up to 106 million, and that really wasn't even a closed range.
No, that's right, that's right.
Infinity was the closed range, I think, depending on how many cars you could actually count.
Right.
And so I think that accounts for the difference.
How does your traffic reduction payment work?
Just like yours. It just has a cap.
And so the A level would be set based on the permitting.
Yes,
The traffic would be measured,
yes.
and then there'd be a penalty of whatever with a cap of $20 million overall.
Over the 10 years, yes.
Right.
We looked at it as $2 million a year, and we kind of thought the 20,000 was arbitrary a car, but we, in the interest of collaboration and listening, did not decide to tinker with that.
Well, the $20,000 was, and I take your point. Okay, now, the look-back condition consistent with our surrounding community agreements, tell me about that.
So the statute provides for a look back based on quote-unquote a triggering event. And so there are 3 articulated reasons why a reopener could happen in a surrounding community agreement. We adopted that in our other surrounding community agreements, and we had proposed that for Boston in our initial surrounding community agreement. The commission came back with a much more aggressive version of that. We understand the statutory requirement, and we are happy to live by it. And frankly, Boston would not be able to claim the benefit of that statute just because of the technical removal of them as a surrounding community. So we wanted to address your concern about reopener, but we wanted to address it in a way consistent with the rest of our surrounding communities.
The look-back provision that we had as a condition that we sent to you was a very different animal. It was a periodic look-back at certain conditions, a determination by the city with your participation as to the economic consequences of your activity. And then a payment by you for unexpected activities, unexpected impacts, adverse impacts that arose. And the look-back condition you're talking about is basically reopening the agreement to take a look at things in the event of some unforeseen event that's described in the statute.
That's correct.
So it's a different approach to a similar problem.
It's a different approach, consistent with all of our other surrounding community agreements, and I think probably more favorable to the community than, for example, the MGM look-back allows netting of positive effects against negative. We also reviewed very carefully your proposal, the Commission's proposal, and it dealt with things like water, sewer, stormwater, construction noise. So water, sewer, and stormwater are all Everett-based. We're using Everett Utilities, and we're mitigating all of that. There is no Boston involvement with respect to those topical matters. With respect to construction noise, it'll be over before the look-back period would have been relevant. We also have a comprehensive plan and are required under various of our permitting to have a construction noise program, a program with respect to the handling of the environmental contamination that comes out of the site. So the state regulatory rubric is really robust in those areas, and we are hopeful that we did agree that to have the public outreach that the Commission has requested for Charlestown and those areas. And so we're hoping that through that process, we can adjudicate and address any concerns that arise.
You have not addressed, but I want to ask you about the requirement, and it was mischaracterized in the terms you were given for a timeline for permitting, and that may have led to some confusion. But the intent was to impose a condition that you get, if you're the licensee, the permits required for the Sullivan Square interim improvements by July 1, 2015.
Part of our discipline involves understanding what we're in control of and what we're not in control of. And so the way we responded to that condition, which came across as if we did not obtain all conditions, all permits necessary from the City of Boston by July 1st, 2015, we forfeited our license,
Well,
which would...
let me just interrupt there. That's true of any of these conditions that ultimately are in there, and so that, in that sense, it was no different than any other condition, but,
Correct.
right.
So we, notwithstanding everybody's good faith, we have had not a lot of success thus far with the City of Boston. So what we did commit to, and our response included, is a commitment on our part to complete all applications for permits for Sullivan Square, which we thought is what you were worried about, within 90 days from the effective date of the license, to vigorously pursue the issuance of those permits, and to take whatever action is available to us to get those permits issued. Otherwise, frankly, we were putting ourselves at the mercy of the City of Boston arbitrarily withholding those permits and causing us to forfeit an investment at that point, which would be several $100 million. It's a place that we didn't feel comfortable.
Right. As a legal matter, Your Honor, I would think one would have to allow for the possibility of a permit being unreasonably withheld. You know, a death watch leading up to July 1.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. But from the Commission's standpoint, the Commission, and I think we've made our points clear during the presentations, the specter of a process dragging on for years without any shovels in the ground is not one that I at least look at with enthusiasm.
Nor we.
Nor we. That's why I
Right.
recommend the reporting mechanism.
Right, right.
And I might add, neither does Mayor Walsh. He even said so publicly last week that the last thing he ever would want to be viewed as was holding up any of those permits. So I think we're going to get the full cooperation of the city and welcome the opportunity to work with them.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any discussion about what we just heard? Any thoughts, general thoughts?
Well, it certainly clears up for me, and I was looking for a little clarity on exactly what the applicants meant by their responses, and each of them have clarified that and have actually, for me anyway, I feel like I understand where they're each coming from at this point.
Other comments?
I would agree with that. Very thoughtful presentations and addressing from both applicants our concerns for this license condition piece.
All right. Does it make sense then to pause for a minute where we are with a focus on licensing conditions and try to prepare, based on what we have heard from them and the conditions we sent out earlier, a set of what essentially will be final conditions for both that would accompany a license award. The other way to do it is to wait until after we make that decision and then give the final licensing conditions and on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. But it seems to me fairer if we spend a few minutes now going through them and trying to come up with a framework. And I think we can do that by building on the licensing conditions that we set out previously and looking at whatever modifications in light of what we've heard we're prepared to make. Does that make sense?
Does to me?
Okay. Let's start with Mohegan Sun. And their modifications primarily were in your area, Commissioner. Do you want to address those?
Yeah. I understand better, as was said here before. I think these presentations were very helpful. I think the applicant has met the spirit of the condition that I had set forward. I initially imagined that they would substitute equity for borrowing, but I can see that they view these as they need to remain flexible at some level as to what may be the best or the better cost of capital. So I think, as I mentioned yesterday, they've met the conditions. So I think when it comes to the additional equity.
All right.
I'm fine the way that they have presented. I understand that they tried to preserve the ownership structure. I did, which as I've described before, it includes several parties and several agreements, etc.
All right. So you're prepared to accept that?
I'm prepared to accept it.
Okay. The domestic and international marketing plan was another condition that they modified?
Right. I think, this meets as well the spirit of how the condition that I put forward originated. We amended a setup that they had advanced. In our view, the market was larger. They have agreed that it is, and I think they've responded again with the spirit. As I mentioned before, they have Connecticut to carve out. I understand. I think there is a benefit to the Commonwealth if all of the promotions that they advance to all their customers in the Northeast would be redeemable in Massachusetts. So I understand, how that benefits the Commonwealth.
All right. And the brigade withdrawal from participation in the decision to call and its divestiture of the of the debt it holds in the Uncasville operations, as I take it.
Yeah, I mean, I
Unchallengeable,
think
right?
it's not, right, I think the bigger picture in my mind, or the bigger issue was relative to the marketing restriction, whether they still hold debt in Connecticut. I think I'm indifferent mostly because, as far as I can tell, they have no decision-making in the operation in Connecticut. So they were only holders of debt over there. So,
All right. The one I was looking at here, and I can't readily find what the response was, for those of you who have it, on page 7 of the conditions, in which we asked them to reconcile the difference in goods and services spending commitments in the various communities. And that was crossed out.
I think there, if I'm not mistaken, the draft set of license conditions, we kind of referenced it twice, and we essentially deleted where it was once and left it where
Well, that
it
was
was
just,
the
that
first
was,
time.
okay, that was just a redundancy. Okay. So with those amendments,
Well,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
2 quick points. I mean, just going through the conditions that I had proposed, and to get back to your comment, Mr. Chairman, about the surrounding community agreements, Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, accepted that condition as we had proposed it. But they had also put forward on the table a new licensing condition regarding a domestic and international marketing plan to provide to
Right.
us. I'm happy to accept that condition as a conditional license. Appreciate their efforts on this part. As we all know, with our Category 2 licensee and our MGM licensee designate, we had asked for a much a limited marketing and tourism plan to be provided by the licensee 90 days prior to their opening. It's not as aggressive as this. This is, I think, will provide a lot more detail, and certainly, as they allude to, they're willing to provide the commission some input and oversight and review and ongoing monitoring. So I guess we're accepting their condition, but I'm happy to do that. I think it's worthwhile.
Thoughts on that, Commissioner?
actually, I just had a thought on my previous remarks, which I wanted to mention. The applicant did advance the notion relative to the marketing restriction, did advance the notion of approval by the commission when it came to the standards and procedures or the agent
With the assistance of
of
someone
a third
we
party,
select.
an agent
Right.
that we can select, we
Right.
can agree,
Right.
et cetera. You'll remember from our discussions last Wednesday, I asked for that. I thought that was an important part for the commission to understand the monitoring of an understanding and drafting of those standards and procedures. To my knowledge, hasn't really been done in the past, but I think it's a recognition that we have an interest in that, and I think it's very positive.
All right, so we accept that, you would be willing to accept that condition, obviously.
Yes.
Any other thoughts, Commissioner Cameron?
Sorry, I just want to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, I'm bouncing back and forth. I want to go back to Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, and the condition we had about keeping us updated, providing us annual reports, talking about their momentum rewards program. We talked about that in a lot of detail. I think we gave them credit for what we think is a really out-of-the-box idea with respect to drawing support for local businesses. They agreed to this condition, but in the back and forth, I guess, on the condition, their original projection of 50 million, which was certainly speculative, and they've acknowledged that. They referenced an estimated 17 million to actually be redeemed in award points at off-site businesses or businesses participating in the program. So is part of that condition just keeping the identity that that's their, I believe, their first year target, and that in future communications about the program, both, I guess, from us and from them, that they focus in on that $17 million figure to make sure everybody understands the program.
So the $17 million figure should be included in a target, as a target in the condition with.
They also acknowledged in their response assigning a full-time person to kind of monitor the program. That's certainly appreciate that effort. They also said maybe to go out and encourage more businesses. I don't think it's a question of more businesses participating in the program. 400 is quite a large number, but again, I think it showed their willingness to partner with us on rolling out this program and having it be successful.
All right, anything further? All right, so as a commission, I think we ought to, by consensus or otherwise, approve of the original conditions as amended by the by the Mohegan Sun response, with the one modification. Well, it's not really a modification. Including the 17 million as a target, and not just something that they've told us they want to do. Is that a fair summary of where we are with respect to Mohegan Sun? And is that by consensus agreeable to all of you?
Yes.
All right, so I'd ask the staff then to prepare contingently a new set of conditions that takes care of that, takes care of those issues. The WIN response is much more nuanced, understandably, because there are a number of terms in the WIN conditions that were derivatives of the absence of a surrounding community agreement. And so the WIN conditions are longer, the response was more nuanced, and I don't see, unfortunately, any way to deal with this other than by going through them one by one and instructing the staff on the basis of how we finally come out on those to prepare a revised set of conditions to deal with them. And so I'm going to deal again with the first of the revisions, and that is a so-called DOR directive in which the definition section of our conditions was which represents an addition to the definition section of our conditions, to say that the DOR directive is a directive or other binding letter from the Department of Revenue that the 6% withholding provided for in the statute doesn't apply to table games. That's the essence of it. And the effect of that is to change the effective date of the license, should it be given to the WIN applicant, to either to the later of the date of the arrival of that DOR directive, or 3 days after the referendum vote, if the referendum is unsuccessful. So let's pause and see whether the commissioners are comfortable with that change.
I'm comfortable with that change. I believe that the reading on the current statutes that dive into that coalesce around here for the table game activity, there is an interpretation that this does not apply to table games. There's an impractical in practical notion to the activity if anybody had to stop and issue W-2s on an activity that happens, much faster than anybody can keep up with, for example. I understand where they're coming from in terms of a business risk, and they would rather have, rather than the open question, some kind of interpretation. Not from us. We've already issued a letter to the legislature on that piece as it relates to slot machines, for example, and that's an important piece that I've always viewed as a competitive notion. That's not what they're suggesting here. They're really focusing on table games. Now, the obvious thing here is that we have no control over that, just like they say. We'd like to have, to commit to things that we can control. But I think there's enough time between now and November 5th, and the other piece of the effective date, where I think that conversation could be advanced, or even maybe DOR has the ability to provide that document interpretation or otherwise. So.
Okay, other thoughts?
Well, again, I think we all agree on the concept. It's just our ability to do this is a question for me, and I'm not as convinced that we have the ability to make that happen.
I think it is going to happen. We have put our recommendation on that. We believe that that's an appropriate and sensible thing to do, that it will not cost the Commonwealth money. It will not keep money out of the hands of people who should get it through DOR distributions, but it will severely disrupt the operation of a table game. So I think we can make that case persuasively. I'm very much unwilling to have that be a trigger for the start of the license. Nothing's going to happen for 3 years. I'm confident that well within 3 years, this problem is going to be resolved. But the problem is that none of the movement starts until this piece is resolved. So I'm not convinced that this should be a condition we accept, though I am fully committed to the outcome at which it is aimed. Is there any further discussion on that? Is there a consensus?
No, I agree with that. I think we're all committed to the business model. If this is going to be a big impediment in the gaming activity, then everybody's got another thing coming. But I agree, it's not something that we can commit ourselves to.
Okay. The next change that they requested is we listed a payment of a slot assessment fee within 3 business days of the Commission's vote to award the license to the win applicant if we did, and listed the amounts of that payment. We did that in the conditions we sent to Mohegan Sun as well. Their change says that they will pay, or their request is that they will pay within 3 business days of the receipt of the DOR directive, and they don't agree to the amounts. The amounts have to be determined at some future date. I'm not willing to accept that change, just to start the conversation. Commissioner Zuniga?
Yeah. Well, the first part of that is the receipt of the DOR directive, and I would agree with that. We just agreed with that.
Right.
What they have inserted in the response is that they're requesting a review of the calculation but otherwise accept the condition. So maybe what we need to do is show them and have them review the calculation.
Well, obviously, we are going to work with all of the applicants after the licenses are issued to true up the appropriate assessment. And that truing up may result in credits, it may result in further debits. The margin is relatively small, and that comes from the fact that what we have now is best estimates of the number of slot machines that are going to be in the facilities. We don't know the ultimate number, but we've got to make some provision for allocating the commission's expenses while we do that, before we do that truing up, until we get everybody on board and we can see what we actually have. We also are creating a mechanism to give the applicants a say and some oversight role in the amount of the expenses that we are incurring. And so there is an opportunity to do that there. But to, at the threshold, say, we're not going to make these payments, notwithstanding your understanding that we're going to true things up once we get everybody aboard, is not to me acceptable. It seems to me we ought to have these payments made. They're in the ballpark, and they're going to be in this vicinity in any event, and we ought to get a commitment to do them and await the truing up process. So I would recommend that we stay with what we had.
And that's the same exact requirement on our other two that we've already issued.
Right, both
So, yeah,
licenses.
To be consistent is really important.
Yep, I'll go along with that.
Okay. The next one is at page 5, it's number 11, and I'm not sure I understand this one, but the condition requires that when abide by and comply with the terms and conditions, and then there's a list that ends with all executed signature forms contained in section B of the RFA 2 application. Those were forms that they signed, they included forms that they signed. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Those forms were attached to the RFA, making various certifications and the like. Well, I think that one ought to stay. Any question about that?
Nope.
The next one is at page 7, condition 16, compliance with the information in the RFA 2 and evaluation reports, and they did not want to comply with everything in the evaluation reports. I can understand that. The evaluation reports were the product of a lot of different input, and then they had appendices attached to them. And it's really open-ended to ask for a commitment from to apply to all those things. I'm not sure you could reconcile them all. So I'm content to take their amendment to that one. Let me say that there is an error in my evaluation report in criterion 7, where we talk about property limits. And I said in the third bullet on page 25 of the actual report that when responded adequately, but property limits uncertain for preferred layout, and then it says it requires a small parcel acquisition in Boston for the access driveway. That's a typo that was induced during the numerous revisions of this that preceded its final. The sentence should read, responded adequately, but property limits uncertain for preferred layout, period. The alternate layout requires a small parcel acquisition in Boston for the access driveway. So that's simply a revision I'm making to that report. Okay, back to the conditions. The next one is page 11, condition 36. The condition said, WIN shall report to the commission on WIN's efforts to have appropriate representation of local and regional business in WIN's retail programs.
Which,
And
I'm sorry, what?
page 11,
page
Number
11.
36.
condition 36.
This, I think, was a carryover condition from the MGM project.
And it simply requires reporting
Right.
and maybe triggering persuasion by the commission, but not giving the commission control over those efforts.
Right.
Well, this is in your wheelhouse, Commissioner. What do you say to that?
Again, it was a condition that I think came out of our discussions with MGM and MGM's focus to incorporating local business, local Springfield area businesses into the MGM complex, and some concern about lease terms and things like that, which may exclude local businesses. So I think we put this measure in to have them simply be a reporting mechanism as to their overall efforts to include local businesses in the MGM project. So it was more MGM-specific condition. I think that's why it's in there.
Well, what's your position on including it here?
Again, I'm happy with the responses provided by this applicant. Again, I completely looked at that condition as a condition that related to the MGM project and probably just got carried over into these set of recommendations.
I must confess, I looked at it differently. I looked at it as an ingredient of their outreach and what they were doing to get local businesses involved in the operations.
But in the,
Maybe I'm misreading it or misinterpreting.
in the retail piece, this goes to the retail, not
Right.
not necessarily how much they spend, for example, or
Right.
how
This
they.
is-
Oh, I see.
This is specific to
The retail
Yeah.
program.
the retail program that they will lease to
And they did
regional
not commit,
businesses.
as
They
MGM.
have not. That's right.
Yeah, and-
Okay.
Sorry for not.
No, that's my misunderstanding of it. Your explanation was clear.
I mean, they could
Okay.
report. It would probably be a very small report, but again, it was more MGM related. to
Yeah,
the
it might be, that's right. I could be 2 words. 1 word, actually. Okay, so we're content to eliminate that condition. Okay,
I would be.
great. The next one is on the same page. It's condition 37. Wynn shall report to the commission regarding discussions with the city of Everett to maintain workforce population in the city of Everett. Wynn requires further explanation with respect to this condition.
I think
Do
I
we
might,
have a further explanation?
yeah, I might be guilty on this one again as well. As you recall, when we were talking with MGM, we entertained discussion around a license condition to have MGM come back to us with a plan of things that they might do to encourage their employees to live and stay in Springfield.
Oh,
This did wind up in their, in MGM's license. It was more of a, come back and tell us, what efforts you might make to encourage your employees to live and stay in Springfield. Again, generated out of an overall concern or, the usual story that we heard several times, that when a casino comes in, people get jobs and end up picking up and leaving. So this is carrying over that MGM requirement, again, not prescribing it to the applicant or the licensee what they need to do, but giving them the opportunity to report to us as to things that they might be doing within the community to encourage their employees, and in this case, the residents of Everett, to stay and maintain residency in the city of Everett.
But the risk of the scenario that you described is a lot bigger, as I suspect, a lot larger in Springfield as it is in the Boston metro area, or Everett for that matter, right?
well, it was in addition a significant issue in public discussion that we heard at the various host and surrounding community meetings we had out there. I don't recall this issue coming up in any of our discussions here. So,
You're right, it did not. This certainly might give either licensee or either applicant a chance to talk about things that they continue to do in the community to improve the overall quality of life within their host community and encourage local hiring. It's more of a reporting requirement without
Right.
necessarily being prescriptive.
Yeah, the idea is if you get these jobs, stay in the community and help advance and improve the community rather than moving out of the community. I think that I'm comfortable leaving that in. It's a reporting requirement, and it's a goal we ask them to maintain, and there are no metrics for determining success, but it's a thought we'd like them to think about.
Is it easy to capture that information?
Well, they can tell us what they're doing.
Right. They can tell us what they're doing. I mean, some of the examples we raised when we were talking about MGM is, participation in a first-time homebuyer program, scholarships, things of that sort. I mean, again, this is more them reporting back to us what they are intending to do or what their efforts are without necessarily judging the metrics out the backside.
Right, and it doesn't commit them to actually doing anything or paying any money, but it does, there are other things that they can do and talk with the city of Everett about what they're doing, and they may get some good ideas, and they may not get some good ideas, but at least it's out there as a thought that we'd like them to think about.
And to a degree, I think on a broader focus, we heard from representatives from Gary, Indiana, not to draw out this conversation, but we heard from a number of representatives that casinos came in, they hired local people, and the first thing those local people did was move out of the community, and that's really not what our hope is.
All right, I'm happy to leave that in unless there's opposition, significant opposition to it. Mr. Zuniga?
No, I mean, it's a reporting requirement.
right. Okay. Commissioner
No,
Cameron?
I'm fine.
The next one is on the same page, plan for entrance and exit of public safety vehicles. They say that they'll comply with their mitigation payments. That strikes me as, which include a public safety component. That strikes me as a reasonable approach to the situation. I had some doubts when we started that they would be able to do this on their own in any event, and I think that that mitigation payments will provide the wherewithal for the city, for the affected jurisdictions to do it. So is it a consensus that we leave, that we accept their response and leave that out?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Page 13, condition 42, reopening of conditions by the commission. This says nothing shall prevent the commission from amending or modifying the license conditions upon a petition from the city of Boston or a petition by Wynn or upon a motion by the commission. And their response is it's unacceptable. Discussion of that?
What,
This no
What
doubt
was the
is
context?
part of the, we want to control the downside exposure, or the upside exposure. I take it. It is part of the conditions that we imposed on Mohegan Sun without the city of Boston being able to cause a reopening of the conditions. But there's a surrounding community agreement there that does contain extensive provisions for revisiting issues under certain circumstances. This one would simply permit the city to petition to have the commission re-examine conditions. The commission revisiting conditions, or when asking the commission to revisit conditions, is a feature of the other licenses we've issued, I think, but it certainly is a feature of the conditions we put in the Mohegan Sun license.
Is it for all of the licensees, the same condition?
But the
This
difference,
recognize, I mean, this is designed to recognize that what we're doing here is we're designing the major features of the relationship. And as we proceed down the road, there are going to be twists and turns, as the journey we've taken thus far clearly reveals, that will require reexamination of what we thought was going to happen. And it seems to me to be a sensible provision to allow that revisitation to occur. It doesn't mean that every time somebody wants to change something, they're going to get to change it. It doesn't mean that the commission is willy-nilly going to change things to the detriment of the licensee. I mean, at some point, the entire relationship has to be surrounded by a trust that the commission, once issuing the license and once setting up the conditions for operation, is going to work to make the venture a success and not be in the business of figuring out ways to degrade that process. It would be crazy to do that. And I think we've demonstrated, both with MGM and with Penn, our licensees, how the commission's focus shifts once the license is awarded. It's no longer a competitive process. It's no longer an effort to get the best value for the Commonwealth. That never leaves, but it is an effort to make this process work. And unless we have that kind of basic trust in where we're going to go and where they're going to go and where other people are going to go, this thing isn't going to work. The fact is that we're going to have to change from time to time some of these conditions to meet exigent circumstances, and all parties to it ought to have an opportunity to raise the issue and see where that issue takes us. That's how I think we ought to approach this. After that windy soliloquy.
no, I agree. I think, we retain the discretion to, the way this was worded. And there is any party, as we have seen in the past, will look to this body on a number of issues, whether they're expressly stated or not. So I agree with your notion, Commissioner.
Mr. Stebbins?
I would agree in leaving this in.
Mr. Cameron?
And we just mentioned the city of Boston here, right?
Right.
Because we're dealing with the city of Boston. The
Well-
other agreements are probably dealing with the host community?
Right. Oh, well, with the host and surrounding community.
surroundings?
Right. And they've negotiated their own reopener clauses, and
I think our general counsel may have.
General Counsel Blue.
The Wynn agreement mentions Boston because of the lack of a surrounding community agreement. The other, Mohegan Sun, simply talks about the commission in Mohegan Sun for that general reason, that when you have a surrounding community agreement, they have reopener clauses. They're also subject to the reopener provisions of our regulations.
But
Yes, and the reopener, I thought I mentioned that earlier, the agreement between Mohegan Sun and the city has what they have constructed as a reopener provision and a revisitation provision to take account of these same issues.
That's right. They have a number of triggers that can provide for a reopener in the Mohegan Sun agreement. So we have the same provision in both agreements. The difference in Wynn is it allows for the petition of the city of Boston. And to be honest, if they were to negotiate a surrounding community agreement with Boston, they would want to come before the commission to determine if that agreement somehow modified or needed to modify the conditions of the license. So it's an appropriate provision to have.
Yes, and we've mentioned on a number of occasions our enthusiasm for that result. I'm sorry.
But that surrounding community agreement only deals with the provisions in that agreement. This would deal with every condition that we have in the license. That's a real difference in my mind.
Well, that's actually an ability the commission has anyways by statute. The commission always has the right to amend or modify or condition a license. So in this, by putting it in these conditions, it is possible that more conditions could be opened or modified upon petition of the parties. But I think that this is a very good flexible option for the commission to have as these facilities will take several years to build and as things will change.
Would it make sense to just say here that, that we're talking about the pieces of these conditions that have to do with the city of Boston, and not every condition here? You know, it just seems like it's not the same to me as a surrounding community.
I see what you're saying.
We can redraft that section to specify what the city can petition to open, yes. and
I
say
would
that
be
they
more
can-
comfortable with that.
We
Yeah.
can certainly do that,
Right.
to be
No,
more
that's a-
specific.
That's a good point.
I
Okay,
That's a good
I would agree, because I think that's the intent of this provision.
Right.
that is the intent, so
Well,
we can
let's-
adjust that.
Let's take a look at two separate conditions, or however you choose to do it, but separate out the right of Boston to petition. Okay, good catch. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, the next one is still on page 13, number 45. The condition said that Wynn shall cooperate with the Commission and the Office of the Attorney General in all gaming-related investigations, and then it goes on to say it shall make a host of documents available to the Commission. The response is that they were not prepared to cooperate with the Office of the Attorney General, and they were not prepared to produce the documents.
If I could comment on that, and this would pertain to some of the other boilerplate conditions. In this initial draft that you're looking at, we included a number of provisions that are statutorily required. We are going to take those provisions out and simply say they have to comply with all of the provisions of 23K and our regulations. This is one that is in the statute. While they may object to it, it is an obligation they have regardless. So we are going to condense the drafting piece of those boilerplates and just make compliance with 23K the appropriate standard.
Okay, that's a neater way to do it. Okay. Everybody
Yes.
comfortable with that?
Yes.
And I take it the next one is the same. It's number 46 on page 14.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll come out, and the general statutory obligation will prevail. All right, page 15, number 53, says Wynn shall provide the commission, our condition said that Wynn shall provide to the commission aggregate demographic information with respect to the gaming licensees, customers in a manner and under a schedule to be defined by the commission. And the response is it's a trade secret. Thoughts about that?
I would just note that if we haven't included it for the other two licensees, I mean, certainly, yeah, we haven't included it for the other two licensees. I'm comfortable with not
Yeah.
having that condition.
Well, and that's also part of the statute. That is statutorily required.
All right, well, then for
Isn't,
both,
isn't there a section on an anonymizing of certain data
Yes.
that they have to provide?
Yes.
This could be like the two conditions we've spoke about before. The statutory requirement is
Right.
there,
Yes.
and we could roll it into 23K.
so I take it then that when we take out these redundancies, I'll call them, and simply rest on what the statute says, which is undoubtedly a better practice anyway, we'll do that to both sets of conditions.
Of applicants.
Yes, for both applicants, yes.
Right.
And any particular condition that we've talked about already that would pertain to both applicants, if we've decided to delete it, we'll delete it in both places. If we're leaving it in, we'll leave it in both places.
Yeah, all right. The next one is on page 17, that that condition says that the terms and conditions of the license are binding on Wynn and its affiliates and permitted successors and assigns. I guess the permitted there is that we have to permit any successors or assigns to exist. I'm not prepared to take that out. This has to endure. Comments, thoughts?
I'm not sure I'm following that. Could you read that one more time?
All the terms and conditions of this license shall be binding upon Wynn and its affiliates and permitted successors and assigns.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
we have to be able to, I don't want to get the commission in a position where the commission is negotiating a whole new set of conditions with whoever it is that's going to buy the facility. And it seems to me that we ought to have this
Yeah.
condition in there so that we don't have to do that.
Fine.
We can always change them on petition. That's why the reopen it on petition is there. But as a presumption, it seems to me that successors and assigns ought to understand that this is what we're going to do.
And that's one we've had with the others, obviously.
Right, right.
What we want to do, and I agree, we are drafting transfer regulations, so I would suggest that we leave this language as is, but our transfer regulations will govern this in more detail, so we will be able to
Okay,
address it.
and that may be an instance in which we have to reopen this to modify a condition to conform to new regulations. But for the moment, if we go forward, we're going forward with this understanding and this condition in place. Okay.
Can I, it's beginning to be a trend here, but I'm going to ask for a break because I'm seeing more discussion on this continuing.
Okay, let's take a 15-minute break then, and we will resume at 10 minutes past 11.